Okay, well, thank you everybody for coming to our opening of Sharon Olscamp's Artist in Residency at the Doucette Hennessy House. Sharon's our first artist in residence, and we're very honored and proud to have her here at the house this summer of 2018. As you well know, Sharon is a long-established artist with a huge amount of body of work that attests to her professionalism and her expertise in many different mediums. And as you can see in this exhibit here today, which is, I would call it a multimedia exhibition. In other words, there are different types of art. You've got watercolor, you've got oil. She also has textile art here. And she also is using archival as well. So we've got a mix of art, which she's going to explain in her statement, her artist statement, her speech after our talk after I introduce her. This is a lady who needs a very little introduction, so I'm not going to take up a lot of time, but I do want to ask you to think about what is culture and what is heritage. I was thinking this afternoon about how would I introduce this whole concept here, and because people think of culture, it's language, or maybe it's ethnicity, or it's clothing that you wear, or maybe it's the way that you talk with an accent, or maybe it's where you came from. But culture also is memory, and it's also how you grow up, and the people who are around you who shape you, who shape the person and the people that we become. And I think that this exhibit here will speak to that experience from the perspective of a woman, Sharon, who grew up in an Irish-Canadian family here in Bathurst, some of that time here in this very home, in the Doucette Hennessy House. So without any further ado, I'd like to, with great honor and respect, welcome Sharon Olscamp to the first artist in residency at the Doucette Hennessy House, and I invite her to explain in her own words what this means, what this exhibit, Don't Forget Your Irish, means to her. So thank you very much.
I have a little preamble I could read if you'll have patience with me.
Sure.
And then I'll sort of explain a little bit more about what it is. Or should I start with it? Okay, I'll start with the preamble, and that'll kind of jog my memory. It's a memory thing too. The whole thing is about memory and memory of family. Okay, this exhibit started off with my recalling Nanny. That's my great-grandmother, my grandmother, and she lived in this house. She owned this house. Her words probably were, "Never forget you are Irish," which might have changed in my memory to "Never forget you're Irish," to the title for the exhibit becoming "Don't Forget You're Irish." I'm not sure how that happened. And then a French translation for the poster. The first translation was it translated back into English as "Don't Forget the Irish," and then we had a totally different translation, which we have now, which is it's kind of interesting. That's what happens around here. Now, many years after my grandmother's advice about the Irish, it was "Never forget your Irish," and I didn't ask her what it meant. I didn't ask her at the time, and I never did. I never thought about it. But when you're young, you don't think of asking questions. And I was about 7 years old. And it just, I wish after she had gone, I wish I had talked more about it and been able to really understood it. I wasn't really interested much in those days. Anyway, again, but many years after my grandmother's gave me the advice about Irish, an artist friend said to me, "Never forget you're a human." Again, I didn't question. I didn't ask him what he meant. I just made my assumptions and probably opened my big mouth and started talking about something else, as I usually do. I should have stopped and thought about it. And anyway, I didn't question whether we shared a common meaning. I assumed that we did. I assumed that what I understood was what he was trying to tell me, but to this day I don't know. And but perhaps I just assume that as humans we all share in common, we share a common culture, a single world view. And now this assumption, eventually I discovered to be wrong. It's very wrong. It was a very false assumption. Now, the exhibit here, the Don't Forget You're Irish, or Never Forget You're Irish, or whatever we want to call it.
Irish never forget.
In French, it's
The
got a
Irish
French
never
name
forget.
too. Anyway, it's expressed through two groups of paintings. Actually, there's three, because those in the kitchen and the hall are here purely for decorative. They're not part of this particular exhibit. This particular exhibit has two groups. One group is the family group here, and the other group, which is a bit large. Well, this is an older group too. Okay, but the rest of them are I call them the other world. And as long as something, I'm sort of jumping here, but as long as something can be forgotten, then history can be rewritten. And the other world, the family, sorry. So how does one make sure that our history is not forgotten? Okay, through books and art, I believe. And I understand that much was forgotten during the dark ages of humanity. While I was doing this exhibit, I was reading a lot about Ireland and Irish and history and ancient history and everything you can imagine. And music. I've been immersing myself in Irish for the last 9 months. So anyway, but as long as something can be forgotten, then history can be rewritten. Now, how does one make sure that our history is not forgotten? Through books and art, I believe. I really strongly believe this. That's why I'm repeating it. Now, I understand that much was forgotten during the dark ages of humanity with the burning of books and destruction of culture. It has been said that the Irish, especially long ago Irish monks, saved humanity by copying and saving books or manuscripts, I believe that they were called then, especially what's called the illuminated manuscripts. Now, family stories so often are never written in books, and much is forgotten over time. Photos eventually become just quaint peeks into some family event, and everything fades with time and age. So I decided to take a look at some old photos of my Irish-Canadian family and see what personal memories might emerge, especially in the context of my grandmother's words. Now, these photographs that I'm talking about, the family series here, these photographs that I worked from were small little old-fashioned snapshot, and they weren't even, not with the exception of one, they weren't portraits, studio portraits. What they were just family shots, and some of them were very, very almost blurred.
Black and white?
Black and white, yeah. There was no color, so I don't know what the colors were, so I just put whatever colors I thought might work. Anyway, I took, and especially in the context of her words, never forget you're Irish. Never forget. So, what does it mean? It's about remembrance. And as I'm 72 years old now, and I've still got a pretty good memory, but I mean, it's going to fade, you know? Yeah. In another 20 years, or another, if I live that long, another 30 years, I mean, I'm not going to have those memories anymore, you know, probably. So anyway, but that's it. One thing, we all get age. So, what does it mean? Never forget. And this was getting really, really complicated, okay? First I had to think about what grandmother said. Then I wondered what she meant. And yes, it did bother me that I'd never asked her to explain what she meant. So how could I possibly remember something I'd never really understood to begin with? Mm-hmm. And then again, could that be part of it? Okay, what is it to be Irish? Was that part of it? Did it mean being a good, well-behaved little girl, never asking questions that might be difficult to answer? Or might she have been trying to tell me to do the complete opposite? To stop trying to be the perfect little Catholic who had never dared question authority. And I was. Yeah, if only I could remember what happened just before that, before her words, she told me, never, that might explain what she meant. but sometimes we don't quite understand what it is we are experiencing while we are there. Sometimes it's only by going back in our memories that we finally get it. Now, I drag out all my old photos and paintings, which is what I did when I started. I began this project at the beginning of, well, actually March 7th. March 7th.
We've been talking about it a long time.
And, yeah, well, but you called me then, and that was when I did I've done these since, and I've reworked those, and the others were done before. Now, so what I did, and then I dragged out all my old photos and paintings to see what they had to tell me. Then I built my story. But because I'm an Irish Canadian, because I've always felt that I was Irish, not even the Canadian part, just Irish. I'm Irish, period, you know. And then I started hearing stories. Well, you can't be Irish if you were born in Ireland, which was really that was news to me because I just thought I was Irish. And I always thought the little people brought me. Anyway, then I built my story. It would be a short story. A complete work would take much longer. I discovered that there was more to being Irish than I'd ever possibly imagined. Now, even if something is clear in our own mind, we might not be able to clearly express what we hope to share. If our language is missing, the words we need to explain our experiences and personal memories and the collective memory of our unique culture, what do we do if we don't have a language? You know, what do we do? Around here, a lot of us are lucky we have two languages. We speak French and we speak English, or some of us do, and we're so fortunate. Those that do are so fortunate. They don't realize that neither one of those languages is really the language of my ancestors. My ancestors would have spoken a language that's long gone now, you know. So how do I understand what it is then to be Irish? So, and how can we express ourselves without being seen as completely dotty? I mean, a lot of what I do is really abstract. The stuff I call the other world, and I mean, this is the conservative stuff. I'm not even showing the weird stuff. So, you know, but this is my other world. You know, my other world that I can't tell anybody about because I don't have the words to tell you about it. So I try to paint them and I try to draw them. Sometimes I'm successful, sometimes I'm not. But that's part of it, you know. So how do we express ourselves without being seen as completely dotty? Maybe the answer lies in the arts. Maybe our bridging languages are found in painting, or music, or dance, or sculpture. Maybe it may be in some yet undiscovered art form. Now, a fleeting thought moves in from the twilight place in my mind, which is the other world. It's that twilight place. And is that it? Is that the Irish place? Surely it isn't the everyday human place. I think the reason such moments must be fleeting is because this place is not fit for constant human habitation. And staying longer than a moment or two might make it impossible to return. I mean, we know about people who've gone too far over the, I like the Tom Cochrane song, you know, the one about going too far over the edge. It's possible. I mean, humans, we're very frail and we're very vulnerable, and we can go too far over the edge. So anyway, I go in there once in a while. I go into this crazy place and I do paintings. Okay, that might indeed be the Irishness, and that might be what my grandmother was trying to tell me. It may have been a warning not to fall into the bog when I was away wandering in my Irish mind, dreamy-eyed child that I was. And I was a dreamy-eyed child. Now, that might indeed be it. So, but now some call that twilight place the second sight, or the other world, And experiencing the second sight and looking into the other world is part of my Irishness. And I accept it, and it's, some people aren't always comfortable about it, but that's what I am, it's me. Now, I suppose the reason the other world is difficult to describe is because it is so mysterious. I think perhaps it's different for each one of us, and I think we each have a little bit of that. I'm sure we do, but it may be very different. So I started a little poem. I only have 3 lines, but maybe they'll come. Peer into my other world. What do you see? As I respect you, please respect me. My view of family and other world might seem strange to you, as your world of commerce and politics and religious groups may seem very strange to me. Even my practical, very sane grandmother experienced that Irish otherworld. I think she might have been trying to tell me that, strange as it was, that it was part of being Irish, a gift inherited from the ancestors. Now I remember my grandmother Hensey as a strong, intelligent woman who was not caught up in the world outside of her home and her family. I guess she had traveled enough and lived long enough to know what was important and what was not. I wonder how my grandchildren will remember me. So that's what I have to say. I think it sort of explains. There's only one little thing. I have a work in progress that's a big part of this exhibit. It's made of paper that was given to us about 40 years ago. My father-in-law worked at the mill, and as many people who worked at the mill did, he brought paper home, and we still have a roll of it. And anyway, I use it every now and then for something special, and I thought that this was special. And you may know that I am a bookbinder also. So what I've done is, this is a traditional bookbinding method, and it's going to be my illuminated manuscript someday.
Wow.
And so during the month that I'm here, I'll be sort of demonstrating it. It'll get a cover, and anyway, part of it is I did a journal. During the months that since March 7th, when we started this, I did a journal.
Wow.
And these are prints of the pen, but the journal is in here. I transcribed it and typed it, and she'll printed it out for me. It's in here to read. So you probably won't have time to read it now, but you know, you can come back during the month of July, read it. There's also a guest book here. I appreciate it if everyone please signed it. You don't have to put any comments. If you want, that's okay too, but please sign it. And anybody who really has an inclination and wants to do a little drawing or something, there's a bunch of empty pages in the back. But this book is really important because any of our family or any of our neighbors or any people in Bathurst who lived here or who worked at the mill before it closed down, who worked at that mill 40 years ago, had a part of making this book, and I really appreciate what they did, all the work that they did in the mill, all those people. Some of them were my own family, and there's something. And then it's bound here with
Oh my gosh!
These are pieces of linen that came out of maps that were part of the. I believe that they were part of the maps that were used in the, Bathurst was at one time the largest zinc mine in the world. And it started with the
Yes,
it started with the Bathurst mining camp way back
1952.
Oh,
Well,
no.
Well, originally 1914. Yeah.
No, it goes way back. But in the 50s, during the 50s, my father was a map maker, cartographer, draftsman, and he did a lot of the maps that were used. He was working in Toronto, but he did a lot of the maps that were used here in the mines. And some of the old maps that were no longer of use, he brought home, and the old maps used to be done on linen with a coating, and we washed them out. So my father and I would have washed these out, and I was left with the linen. And then this here is these threads are the last in my roll of linen thread that actually did come from Ireland, and that I was using when I was doing the bookbinding. So anyway, this is going to be a process during the month. So anybody who's interested in bookbinding and would like to learn to do this, you're welcome to come back to the house. So I guess that's all I have to say.